All right, welcome everyone. Tonight we're talking about childhood anxiety. And unfortunately, we're talking about childhood anxiety, um, something that's becoming more and more common in our community and in the community at large, and becoming um, more severe and more prevalent younger and younger. And tonight we're talking about childhood anxiety. But as parents and as adults watching this, there's going to be lots of things that you're going to be nodding your head to that you see in yourself. And the neurology is the same. And a lot of these things are mirror images. But tonight we're looking through the lens of childhood anxiety. We don't treat, we don't diagnose anxiety, as we'll get into tonight, though. When we have a calm and connected nervous system, the brain and the body are connected. Um, we see some really good things happen with the nervous system. And as we'll get into is, anxiety is that overwhelm, that fear, apprehension, worrying, fear of the future. And it's a healthy thing. It's a survival thing. So when we have anxiety, again, healthy, we want that to happen, but we want it to go away, right? So we don't want it to be all the time and have a hairpin trigger where it's getting triggered a lot. The mechanism that happens when that switch is flipped, after that, your body's doing exactly what it should be doing, right? Going into fight or flight, being, vibrating a higher frequency, being ultra aware of things. But so often it's the perception of danger when it's not there. And that's what we're working through. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And some of the scans we actually look at too is like, what is the body telling the brain? Is the body telling the brain there's danger there when there's not really danger there? And then that switch gets flipped. And then we have, some of these anxious and anxiety type things pop up. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get into some slides here. Okay, so this is our team. I like this picture because it sums us up in a nutshell. We like to have fun, even when we're talking about something as serious as anxiety. We like to have our place to be warm and welcoming. And if your child is having some anxiety, they've been to most likely lots of different doctors, and they know how that goes. They go into a weird room, they have to wait. Somebody opens the door, they shut the door behind them and it just doesn't feel good. That's anxiety inducing already. And we're trying to do the opposite, right? We want to be calm. We want to have an inviting space. And it starts with parents that bring them in. We want the parents to feel good and have that, okay, we're greeted with a nice smile. This is a nice environment. So your guard can go down and we can build that trust with you and your kids. And we like to have fun. And we like to say that we want you to leave the Wellery a little bit lighter than when you came in. And obviously what we do in the care rooms, it's a big part of that, but we know that the healing starts when you walk in the door and it doesn't end until you leave. And so that's our goal here at the Wellery. I always start off, anytime we talk about anything at the Wellery, we always start about this: gas versus brake. So gas pedal being a sympathetic go, 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 fight or flight; brake pedal being the parasympathetic: rest, relax, grow, heal. And there's three types of stressors that can contribute to our body getting more and more into that sympathetic tone and vibration. And we can break those into physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. And this starts in utero. Everything, obviously, physically, chemically, emotionally, that birth parent feels, the baby is feeling that too. A huge physical stress that we see a lot is the birth process itself. Chemical stress, again, that can be in utero, that can be birth process, that can be medications, antibiotics. A lot of these kids that we're seeing with anxiety and some of these other neurological things going on, we can trace that back to 99% of them have at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, 7, 8, 9 rounds of antibiotics. And so they're figuring this out now, that they're connecting the dots between antibiotic usage and some of these other neurological things that are going on with our kids. Emotional stress, as a baby, that's navigating gravity, that's breathing air. And as we get into school age, obviously there's social pressures and anxieties that go along with that. And we could have another webinar probably on phone usage and social media and what that's doing to our kids. And there's some research coming out that it's hard to research, but there's some things coming out that people are suggesting that you give flip phones to kids until they're 16, no social media until they're, 17, 18. Like I said, that could be a whole nother webinar. But what happens is when we have a lot of these stressors, and we're finding out the earlier and the more often that this stress is introduced to the child, that the likelihood of some of these things developing is higher. And some of the perfect storm type things that we talk about, where we can start checking things off of ear infections, colic, reflux, or constant colds, immune challenges, to being behind in vocab, to having behavioral mood problems. And then, 7, 8, 9, 10, we're starting to see the anxiety. They're just, the nervous system, the brain's just overwhelmed. And just like you and I, right? When we get overwhelmed and we have a lot of things coming in, we're not ourselves, right? Mood isn't great. Behavior isn't great. We have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which we'll get into, where we have some coping mechanisms. We can realize we're in that. Even for adults, it's really, really tough. But for these kids, it comes out as mood and behavior and lack of sleep and some of the things that we're going to get into. The number one job of your nervous system is to perceive the environment and make the appropriate adaptations. And that's some of the things we talked about before, is like, well, if you're perceiving danger and these stressors are coming in, that's going to be an issue if we're constantly looking around the corner, because what happens is those nerves fire and wire together, and all of a sudden now we're looking for a danger when there's not even danger there, because we're so conditioned to be in that fight or flight phase. And so this is another quote. We don't do a presentation without this quote on. You can't be in growth and protection at the same time. So basically, Dr. Bruce Lipton is saying is that you can't be in that growth, development, parasympathetic part of your nervous system, which we want kids to be in a lot of the time, most of the time, and protection, which is in that fight or flight. And the longer we stay in protection in that fight or flight, this is when things can definitely go sideways for our kids and ourselves too. So we put top 5 signs of anxiety. This is stuff that we see here. This is by no means a exhaustive list. And I'm sure you as parents and yourselves have different triggers and different things that you're seeing. This is, again, we're not diagnosing, we're not treating. This is things that we've seen and parents are telling us and things that we work with. But one of the top things for us is sleep. And if that's bedtime routine, it takes an hour and a half to get to bed. We have to do certain things in a certain way. Only mom or only dad can, read us a bedtime story. Or if it's, we fall asleep, then it's staying asleep. And we hear a lot of times parents, they're getting up in the middle of the night just consistently. It's just a routine. 2, 3 o'clock, they get up, they come into bed with us. And it's just this cycle. Night terrors, sleepwalking, sleep talking, sweating, and that's when that nervous system isn't balanced. So sleep, lack of sleep is a huge deal. We had a 20-month-old come in. Behavior was not very good, wasn't getting any sleep. We adjusted him. Since the first day we adjusted him, and now we're going on 3 weeks, he's had, 17 out of 18 nights he slept through the night. Okay, so we're able to balance that nervous system really quick. And guess what happened to his mood? And guess what happened to his behavior, right? He's not a jerk anymore. He's interacting with his brother and sister a lot better. He's just more calm and more connected. And that's all due just to sleep. We got to get our sleep. Emotional regulation. These are the kids that have outbursts. They're overly emotional, lots of, crying early and often. It doesn't take much to basically set them off. The prefrontal cortex that we mentioned, and the limbic system. Okay, so the prefrontal cortex is that executive part of our brain. It helps with impulse control. It helps with organizing and processing, emotions and data. And that limbic system is our caveman, cavewoman part of our brain. That's the emotional, deep seat of our brain. Sometimes people call this, the prefrontal cortex is the upstairs, and then the limbic system is the downstairs brain. You may have heard of that described that way. An exercise I like to bring parents through is, let me get to a full screen here, I'll show you. And so if this is your prefrontal cortex and this is your limbic system, okay, so this is survival, right? And this is something that comes online 3, 4, 5, 6, really develops, as we get stronger, as we get older, into our 20s. And so that's why you can't reason with a 2-year-old. It's not really a thing there yet. So what happens is, if there's more stress, okay, back to those physical, chemical, emotional stressors early in life, this is like a muscle. It gets worked out a lot. It gets really strong. And those that we talked about, those nerves, the nervous system wire and fire together. So this is really strong. As that prefrontal cortex tries to come in control, These are these kids that it takes, they're 7, 8, 9, 10, and they pop the lid, right? This limbic system is really in control. A lot of the energy and the wiring goes to this limbic system. What we want to do as chiropractors and we want to do as parents is get more energy and more recognition, activity to this prefrontal cortex. So this is stronger. So it kind of holds that in. Now, there are absolutely times in a healthy relationship with these two that we need to survival mode. We need to do this, right? But a lot of times we get that triggered and it doesn't need to be. And so that's what we're trying to do is get more attention to prefrontal cortex. A good example, sometimes when kids are, really good at school and they come home and they have some anxiety, they have some behavioral issues, and they're just hanging on. They're hanging on. And then when they get home, what happens? They pop the lid, right? And so we want to get more attention to that prefrontal cortex, and that will really help our kids process, and all of us really process things a lot easier. Inflexibility, see a lot of this, OCD tendency, things just have to be a certain way, a certain rhythm of things. You have to, kiss mom first, then we kiss dad goodnight, or we have to have so many stuffies in a certain order in our bed, and we have to wear certain things, not wear certain things. So, changes in routine and schedule are really, really troublesome for these kids, and we have to really pump them up, right? As we go to grandpa and grandma's this weekend, we got to constantly talk about that and try to lessen that blow, that perceived danger to them, because we really thrive on those routines and we know what's next. We know what to expect. These are the kids that have high expectations. They're really high strung. You kind of get an idea of kind of those kids and those adults that are wired this way. GI immune stress. These are kids, again, part of that perfect storm sequence where they've been sick a lot or they're constantly sick. They have a nervous stomach and that shows up as diarrhea. Maybe they're puking in certain situations or new situations where they're just, Mom, my tummy hurts. I'm like, why? I don't know. Brain gut connection, the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, and we talk about that all the time in here, right? It's the main brain gut connector. It's the main calming nerve of our body, and that lives up in C1, the first cervical vertebrae. And so when we see stress stuck, and we'll get into some things that we look for in that upper cervical, that is really going to have effect on that vagus nerve. You're going to have a hard time calming and regulating a lot of these things. As we get a little bit older in age, and this can happen again, this can happen early, but that low self-esteem, confidence, we're socially awkward because we're in protection, we're in that fight or flight, we're not involved in things, we're going to school to home. I think it's part of it is normal, of teenagers, and we get that we're texting, you get one-word answers, you don't get a lot of information. They can seem a little bit shut down because there is a lot of stuff going on. You dump hormones on that. It's not a great situation, but these are the kids that are disappointed, and there's a lot of back to self-confidence and doubt in those things. So again, it's not an exhaustive list. There's lots of different nuances in these things, but these are the things that came to my mind over the last couple months when I was kind of preparing for this. Tips and tools, again, not exhaustive list, excuse me. But again, we talk about routines. We talk about, movement for kids is huge and for all of us. And there's just overwhelming amount of evidence of exercise for adults and movement for kids is so key to their calmness, their balancing of that nervous system. Less chaos. This is something that I'm finding out about myself when my work environment is nice and neat and orderly and things are put away. I'm really noticing that I feel better. I feel calm. If I walk in the office in the morning and things are nice and put away, it's a great start to the day. If there's stuff all over the desk, if I walk into the wellery and things are, pillows are all over the place, and you can imagine it being a pediatric clinic, there's just stuff that happens. If we don't do that at the end of the night, it starts that day off and I feel anxious. So where are they studying? Where are they spending a lot of their time? What's your house look like? Also, less chaos can mean schedule. It can mean, are we going from one place to another to another? Are we eating, meals in the van on the way to this thing, onto another thing? And, every family is different and every family can operate. We're saying maybe just take a look at that. Take a look at that. There's a lot of chaos and disorder, in your day and your week. And as adults and as parents, you need to look at some of those things and how are you doing, right? Is your life chaotic? Is things out of control there? Are you an anxious person? That's going to feed and that's going to affect the children as well. Diet, again, this could be a half-hour webinar on its own, where we go into obviously food dyes and preservatives and sugar and junk food and all those things that can really have a huge effect. When I look at this is kind of like going to grandpa and grandma's, right? We tease in here like going to grandpa and grandma's is like going to Vegas. It's like you stay up way too late, you eat stuff you normally don't do, you don't move your body the way you should normally. There's a lot more just changing routines and bedtimes and all that stuff. And we know when we come back from grandpa and grandma's, it takes a few days for us to get regulated. That behavior, the mood, that anxiety is a lot worse those days following vacation or, going away. And this last thing underlined is why we're here, why we're talking about anxiety, and that's balance in the nervous system. We talked about that sympathetic and that parasympathetic nervous system. This is huge. And this is what we do all day, every day, no matter what no matter what comes into the clinic. But obviously huge with anxiety is to balance that, get, again, that prefrontal cortex in control, get that parasympathetic moving, take away some of that sympathetic, that fight or flight protection. And because we can try diet and routines and movement and do all these things, but if we're not balancing the nervous system, we're not going to get the most out of those efforts. And so to me, this is kind of like the foundation of everything. So when we look at some of the scans that we do, and obviously we're super uber focused on neurology here, we do 3 scans. This one is the thermal scan, which we run on everyone. We can see it, we're doing on a baby. This one takes about 10 seconds. And what we get over here is basically where that stress is stuck. We know that one of the main jobs of the nervous system is to regulate temperature. We know that in Minnesota, we're constantly, it's 40 one day, it's 80 the next, right? So what this is showing is that the right side of the body in this area is not doing the same thing that the left side is doing. It's not adapting. It's not perceiving the environment and making appropriate adaptations, right? So there's something there. And so a lot of times with anxiety, we do see upper cervical things because of, again, that location with the vagus nerve. So this is kind of a roadmap for us to look here. Kind of says, doctor, okay, look here first. Another one we do is, it's called a surface EMG, and this is the big one. This is the one that tells the story most of the time when we have kids coming in with anxiety or behavioral issues. This is basically telling what the activity is, what the body is telling the brain, how much energy is going up into the brain. And we want nice, smooth, symmetrical. You and I are having a conversation. I'm the body, you're the brain, and we're going back and forth, and it's nice and easy. We don't want chaos. We don't want our body yelling at our brain. We want those decibel levels nice and level. The analogy I make for parents is like, okay, you're downtown Minneapolis, you're going to Disney on Ice, you're driving a van full of kids, and you want to parallel park downtown. Okay, well, kids are loud, having fun. You're rocking out to T Swift. What do? The first thing you do, right? Turn down the radio, tell the kids to be quiet so you can focus in. Well, our body, our brain is no different, right? It can stand so much. We have like, hey, we need to quiet this down. We need nice, symmetrical, calm energy going up into the brain. This is the thing we look at, this energy index. This is at 438 for this person. We want that in kids to be about 160, 170, 180. Think of this as decibel levels. The body is yelling at the brain. If I'm going to yell at you all day, every day, eventually the brain is going to yell back, and it's going to make it harder to process. We talk about that gas pedal, right? It's going to make it harder to process and organize, and that limbic system is eventually going to be in control. This is a HRV, heart rate variability. This is a finger scan. This is the toughest one to do because we have to sit in the room by ourselves for 3 minutes. For adults, it's challenging. For kids, it's really challenging too. But that gives us some good data, kind of overall nervous system where we're at. And so 2 numbers here. Again, not to get too in the weeds here, but this number is how high you are on the graph. And that's kind of your reserves, your battery power. The higher, the better. We want you in this green area right in through here. And this balance is, are you stuck in fight or flight? See the sympathetic over down here, or are you parasympathetic? So think of this left side as the gas pedal, this right side is the brake pedal. Okay, so when we're over in parasympathetic, this can be due to if you're dealing with anxiety. If you're over here, that could be due to some medication where we're trying to, slow things down, kind of drive, tapping the brakes, so to speak. If you live life over, excuse me, over here, that's just gas pedal down. And so this gives us some good information as well. We talked about Aaliyah today because I think it's always good to tell a story, and we always want to hear your child's story because there's always stuff to unpack there. Mom had anxiety around pregnancy, and mom was a little more high strung, kind of, one of those type default personalities or, nervous systems. During the birth, we had epidural, episiotomy, manual assistance. So we go back to that. Okay, epidural, chemical, the manual assistance, right, coming in through here, very physical. And the episiotomy, that's showing just more anxiety, more healing around that postpartum, those first days, moments, weeks of life. And so Leah kind of had all three of those as far as the chemical, physical, and emotional part of birth and in utero. She had trouble latching, which is again created more anxiety and more anxiety for Aaliyah as well, right? More anxiety for mom and Aaliyah. We're supposed to eat, poop, and sleep. That's what we talk about babies doing. And if we're not able to do those things, that's going to get, again, us in more survival mode. And then she had dental surgery. She had issues with her tooth at 3 years old. So again, more physical, chemical, mental stressors early in life. Came in with, some emotional regulation issues, hair loss, overwhelm, night terrors, night sweating. She was just a ball of anxiety at 8.5 years old. A ball of anxiety. She was losing her hair. She'd been to different doctors, did different things. When it came down to it, her nervous system was just out of balance. I know I shouldn't say just because it's a big deal, but when we will go through her scans and her story, and we'll show you. So this is the EMG that we did. And again, we talk about decibel levels, right? The body's yelling at the brain, 355. You just look at this black squiggly line. It doesn't look organized. It doesn't look calm, right? So this is initial exam after 12 visits. This was it. Okay, so now you can see this jump up to 823. This is a common thing that we see. So at 8.5, her body is trying to figure things out. She's doing a lot of compensating. We go, and even when we're neurologically really super focused and we're very gentle and we're very conscious of a lot of these things, it is a disruption, right? We're poking the bear here a little bit. We're saying, hey, you've been speaking English this whole time. We want you to speak Spanish. So this is new. The brain and the body have to coordinate a lot of different things. And so you can see that energy index jump up to 823. So if she was yelling before, her body to her brain, now it was screaming. And we did see some behaviors and some anxiety jump up. And that's very common. It's kind of like when you clean the closet. When you clean the closet and you bring everything out, it looks very disorganized. It looks very chaotic. And that's when we start care. Sometimes what happens, okay, let's unpack this. Let's get this all out. Let's get this organized. Let's figure this out. And this is what she's in that phase. Okay, once we can sort things out and now we put things back in the closet, so to speak, in an organized manner, it starts to look better and better and better. And so this is her progression. So we went from 800 down to 297 after another series of adjustments. And you can just see that black line, it just looks more symmetrical. It looks more calm, right? So that body is starting to talk like this to the brain instead of screaming at the brain. And 245, and then eventually down to 218. And this is really, really good for Aaliyah. And she had some really, really awesome results. And so this is kind of Leah's mom's kind of testimonial. We started taking her daughter to Dr. Chad because she had some hair loss, trouble sleeping, and difficulty regulating her emotions. We have seen significant improvement with all three. And this is, I purposely put this in, this is some key stuff too. I started seeing him too, and I've been keeping my anxiety under control. And so that's what we talk about when the family, the household is in that storm and in that anxiety, and we're feeding off each other. We knew Aaliyah could get to a certain level, and we were so glad that her mom came under care too. And so they really feed off each other. So if we get mom's nervous system regulated, mom's nervous system, under control, and calmer, then that's going to help Aaliyah as well. Mark Twain, I saw this quote like 2 months ago. I was like, this is good. Worrying is like paying a debt that you don't owe. I've spent most of my life worrying about things that have never happened, and that's anxiety, man. And it's easy just to say, don't worry about it. You have friends or don't worry about it. Well, okay. And we know that anxiety there's lots of different things going on. But we know when the body and the brain are well connected, when that prefrontal cortex has control over the limbic system, we're able to process things, we're able to organize things. The anxiety is a lot less, and that fight or flight is a lot less. And the body and the nervous system can regulate a lot of these things. A lot of cool stuff happens. That's a Leo. If you're nodding along to this, it sounds like your kid. Obviously, continue the conversation. That's my personal email. Reach out with any questions. That's our website. We have a lot of good resources on that as well, and the number. We'd love to help. We'd love to see how we can help, and that starts with getting scanned and just seeing kind of where that stuck stress is. Is the body yelling at the brain or not? And so, with those scans, it gives us a lot of confidence, and it gives parents the confidence too of like, okay, there's something there. There's objective data there that shows us why we're maybe having some of these struggles. We had a 16-year-old. I'll leave you with this. We had a 16-year-old in about 6-7 months ago. He had been anxious, running a little bit hot, and now he's more in that depressive type mood, and his nervous system is starting to shut down a little bit, which again is survival. I mean, that's what the body does. You can only go so hard for so long before you start shutting down. And we went through the scans with him, and I said, all right, man, what do you think? He's like, I've been to a lot of doctors, and this is the first place where I could actually see why my body and my brain were doing the things that they're doing. Because, when you're depressed, what's the matter? I don't know. You're in it, right? Your anxiety, the depression, you're in it. You don't know. And so the scans and going through this process was huge for him because he had some data. He could see things of why he was kind of going this way. And he's had amazing results, and we're so happy for him. And he's back in school, and he's got a job and all the things. But yeah, reach out. Thanks for hanging around for the last 20 minutes, half hour, and we'll talk to you next time.